أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. This is the third review session for Denial, a class taught by Sheikh Rasul Qadi. This is the tafsir of Surahs Rahman and Yasin, and inshallah we are going to continue with the tafsir of Surah Yasin, and in this session we will be going through the ayat 31 through 55. So once again I will be saying some of the things that are not on the slide, so please look through the slide, pause the video and look through the notes, and hopefully everything put together will be enough to cover all the information, because this is a very, very long class. It has a lot of material. So Bismillah. Well, in ayat 28 through 32 we basically are seeing this is a repetition of what we talked about. We discussed this, that how the Quraysh were being addressed and they were being warned that just because they did not see the punishment that happened to the people of Antioch does not mean that the punishment is not coming, and it is there. And then moving on from ayat 33 through 44, one of the things that we will consistently see is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to bring many proofs of how Allah is capable of resurrecting the dead and resurrecting basically everything and anything. And the three proofs that are it's divided up into three sections, basically the dead land and how it comes back to life, and then the night and the day and how the night comes back and how the day comes up, and of course the final one is the issue of the ship, which we will talk about inshallah in more detail as we get there. So ayat 33 to 36 is talking about the dead land. We do know that the word ayah indicates, it basically means a sign, and so it is anytime we see the word ayah comes up, we should notice that this is a flag, and this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, that here is another sign for you to see. So basically Allah is saying, if you cannot believe that I can resurrect the dead, then here is the reality. Let me show them the reality. And in these ayat, the dead land, it's something that we're very commonly used to seeing, but basically Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing us that this element is not, of bringing the dead land back to life, is not something that is that is technically very easy, but for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala it is of course very easy. So we see this phenomena, especially we don't see this phenomena in this part of the world, but in Arabia, in certain lands, there are lands that have become completely dead and nothing can come out of it, and yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala causes it to produce fruit and grain. And so this is an indication of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can bring something back to life. In the following ayat we have a discussion about the grapes and the dates, and I will let you read the translations on your own and the details, the bullet points on the slides. But basically Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here is saying that is questioning the people, that that is it your hands that did something, because all you did was you planted it, you watered it, and you did all of that. Well, where did all of this come from? And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is questioning the people, he's basically indicating that all of this comes from him, that this is not a big deal for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to create something and to make something which is already dead, to reproduce it and to start producing something. And of course here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the miracle of creation and the miracle of life, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in these ayat he talks about how he has created everything in pairs, and there was a detailed discussion in class about how some things don't have pairs, and we need to not get too literal in this, but essentially there is a general idea that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created everything in pairs, including plants. Plants are of two genders as well, and if Allah had wanted, he could have created everything in just one gender, but from his hikmah he did not. Once the discussion about the creating in pairs is over, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts talking about the night and the day. And this is such a beautiful verse, alhamdulillah. I mean, I don't have much time to go into it in much detail, but basically the idea that we peel away the day until everything is left in darkness. So the day is peeled away slowly, and then until the night is left. And basically the idea is the visual that was given in class was that, like, almost like you skin an animal, and when you start peeling the skin back, it's very precise. And and when it's not just very random, it's very precise and very um, in step by step you take away the peel. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he talks about this, he says he peels away the layers of the day one after the other. And if you look at the sun setting and you see how the degrees going down, the brightness of the light going down slowly, and until all the lights are gone and only darkness is left, it's a very beautiful description in these ayat about the night and the day. And then of course in the next ayah, Allah talks about how the sun is running on its fixed course, and so there is an appointed time for everything. And here we learn that that the sun is moving, and we do know that when the Quran came down, basically people thought that the earth was stationary or the sun was stationary. But basically here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us in the Quran that everything is moving, and there is a place and a movement for everything and a time for everything. And it's just so absolutely amazing how time and everything is fixed together, and everything just works together, and it doesn't take away from anything. And then of course Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the moon, and that that the moon days are very specific, and and on the 29th night of the moon, when you see it, it's the word urjun is like this, the stalk that you pluck the dates from. And once you have plucked the dates from the stalk, then the fiber becomes useless, and it's yellow, and it's semicircle, and it's very, very thin. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the moon exactly like that, as though it's very it's yellowish in color, and it's semicircular, and it's thin, and again, and the next day it comes back, and again it starts growing. So all of these ayat are basically a description of the night and the day, and how they complement one another. One of the things that in these ayat that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is basically reminding his, not just the Quraysh, but basically all of us, is that these huge objects, and they are working around in perfect synchronization and harmony. Nothing clashes with one another. So how do you think, again, these are the ayat, the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where he is telling us, look at these things, and then tell us that if you cannot understand, because if you still cannot appreciate the signs and see it, then you are like those camels who have their head up in the air and you cannot see the Sirat al-Mustaqim. There is a very beautiful hadith from Bukhari and Muslim that I do want to mention here, because I remembered it from class, where the Prophet ﷺ asked one of the Sahabas that, do you know where the sun sets and when the sun sets, or that the sun sets, basically. He asked the Sahaba, and the Sahaba responded that Allah and his messenger knows best. And the Prophet ﷺ basically responded with that the sun goes until it prostrates under the throne of Allah, and then it asks permission from Allah to come back up. So even the sun has to get permission from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to rise. And that was such a beautiful hadith that I wanted to mention it here as we move forward into these ayat. Now the ayat 40 through 44 are basically talking about the ship, the reference to Nuh alayhi salam. The interpretation of this ayah is twofold. One was that the ship is in reference to Nuh alayhi salam, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that we carried the children, basically the children of mankind, and with other animals on it. And the other interpretation is that we carried them, which means the Quraysh and the Quraysh children on it. So both interpretations are valid, and the first interpretation is talking about a previous miracle, and the second is talking about a model miracle. Okay, so here in these ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the different kind of vehicles that are being used. We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught Adam alayhi salam how to speak. So basically the idea of, of building ships, communication, all of these things, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He is the one who taught people ideas. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught Idris alayhi salam how to use a pen. Similarly, there were many examples that were given in class, and of these examples, we should always remember that even though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught us these things, and these things like a car or a plane may be commonplace for us, nevertheless, it does not take away from the miracle that it is. And again, once again, it is a reminder that we need to see these things, and we need to be able to see the signs of Allah. And in the final ayah number 44, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about how basically these things are a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it is a mata. Basically, it is something that Allah has given us to enjoy for this time that we have it. Some of the benefits of these ayat from 33 through 44 include that we learn that the blessings are in pairs, so everything has a strength and a weakness. We do understand the perfection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because how He describes the stripping away of the night from the stripping away of the day to reveal the night, and then how all of these celestial orbits that are moving in space with the sun and the moon and the schedules and all of these things, these are the benefits of the ayat, that they are these are all put into place by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so as signs for us to recognize His existence and His power and majesty, just understanding how great He is. There is a whole list on page 38 in your notes about the benefits of these ayat. Please go ahead and take a look at those as well, inshallah. And from there we move on to ayah number 45 through 47. In the following ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the response of the Quraysh when these miracles are shown to them, and how they are basically told to see what is in front of you, and yet they are unable to see it. So here they are reminded of the punishments of the akhirah, and and again, the idea is have taqwa, and they keep refusing to do that. And from there we talk about how they have basically, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking them to spend in charity and to give to the poor, and they basically question that. It's almost as though they're questioning everything that they say that respond to the believers that, do you want us to give food to those? If Allah had wanted, He could have given them food himself. So basically they're just arguing, and at the time in Makkah there was no laws about zakat and everything. So charity, the idea of being charitable, being generous, is being encouraged. And the idea is that believers will be giving dawah through different ways. It's not just teaching taqwa, but also being charitable. That Allah has blessed you with this money, go ahead and pass it forward and give it to others. Some of the benefits of these ayat 45 through 47 is, there are actually several, but one of them that I thought was very important was that being charitable is a part of your iman. So being generous is a part of your iman. It goes hand in hand with your iman, and that this could be a form of dawah as well. And then having iman in your heart lets your heart be softened. So it is all circular. Everything is connected to one another. One of the wisdoms of having evil in this dunya is that it brings about good, because you need good to combat the evil. So this is also one of the wisdoms of having, when you see something bad, it also encourages a lot of good in the dunya. In the following ayat number 48 through 54, we see the misguidance of the people who are idol worshippers. And basically this is, in these ayat, you will be able to see what they are going to be facing on the Day of Judgment. And again, this is a long session, so I'm going to skim over this, but please look through the notes and go through exactly the details of how Sheikh Yasser spoke about the trumpet being blown, and there was a discussion about the trumpet being blown twice or thrice, and I think the popular opinion was that it would be blown twice. And and again, those are even though the punishments of the grave are severe, but compared to the Day of Judgment, compared to the Yawm al-Qiyamah, these will the graves which actually had the punishment will seem like resting places for the kuffar. This whole detailed explanation in these ayat are basically talking about how the Day of Judgment will be happening, and you'll find these in your notes on pages 45, actually 42 through 45 probably. Some of the benefits of these ayat, because that is not in these slides, I'm going to speak to them really quickly, was that it reminds not just the believers but everybody about the suddenness of Yawm al-Qiyamah, that it will happen very, very suddenly, and that when people are on the day of Yawm al-Qiyamah, on the Day of Judgment, when people are said that they will ask questions, what it means is that their intellectual faculties will be intact, and so they will be able to understand and see what is going on, and they will be able to question it. And the whole idea of the Day of Judgment being something that is unknown, and that in itself will be a punishment of its form, because it will be unexpected. Even though the kuffar have been told about it, but the believers will not be upset about it, because they will say that this is from what we have known was upcoming. We knew that this would happen, whereas the kuffar would be concerned about how the fact that they did not believe in it. These ayat about the Day of Judgment are relatively detailed. Once again, I would ask you to please look through your notes, because those are important, but I have gone over some of the important things, and I hope that inshallah helps us. So until the next review session, inshallah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.